Hello and welcome to another off-the-shelf board game review. Today we're going to look at Relic Runners. Relic Runners is a game for 2 to 5 players, ages 10 and up. Manufacturer says the playtime is about 40 to 80 minutes. I seem to notice it goes more towards the 80 minutes time frame, but your mileage may vary. The game was designed by Matthew Dunstan and is published by Days of Wonder. In Relic Runners, each player plays an archeologist trying to search temples, search shrines, and search ruins, trying to find some relics, score some victory points, and end up being the victor of the game. Players are going to be racing around the board trying to find the most relics, and as soon as a certain amount of relics have been discovered by the players, the end game is going to be triggered, and you're going to get one final turn. Whoever has the most victory points at the end, again, is going to be the victor. You gain victory points from relics, from exploration, and from various different activities you're going to perform while playing the game. If you want to learn how to play Relic Runners and actually see sample gameplay, be sure to check out my tutorial and sample gameplay video. I'll have it uploaded approximately the same time as this one goes live. In that video, I'll show you exactly how to play Relic Runners, teach you actually how the game is played, and I'll show you a pretty long sample game. You can go from the beginning of the game all the way to the end, and even show you the final scoring and how victory is determined. Relic Runners retails for $60, and for that $60 you are actually getting a fair amount of really good components for your gaming dollar. Now, before I talk about the game components themselves, I want to talk about the insert that comes with the game. Now, in my experience, Days of Wonder always does a really good job with their game inserts, and Relic Runners, for the most part, is no different from the standard. And while I haven't seen Days of Wonder do as good of an insert as the original insert from the original Small World game, which I still to this day say is one of the best gaming inserts I've ever seen in a board game, this game actually still has a very good gaming insert. And as you can see, the gaming insert has a location for you to store all the components very nicely, to store the game and keep everything separate and still looking really nice. There's only one minor downfall for this storage insert that I don't have an explanation for, but I'm going to go and share it with you anyways. For some reason, the insert, the wells are not quite deep enough for when you just store the temples in the board or in the box. So the temples actually stack up above the gaming insert, which means if you store your games on the side, while most of the components are going to stay in their spot where they're supposed to, the temples are actually going to slide out and ride around a little bit. It's not a big deal unless you're one of those people who stores your games on the side, then know that you better watch how you store these, otherwise they're going to slide around and get a little bit banged up. Although, to be honest with you, they are pretty thick cardboard, so it is going to take quite a bit to bang up these components. Now on to the components themselves. Now before we go anywhere, we have to talk about the relics that come with this game themselves. These relics look awesome. Each one of the relics has an individual unique mold with a little bit of a crystal on them to make them look really cool. There's a mold for the frogs, for the skull, for the Juju Tiki dolls, and also for the birds of paradise. They look fantastic. These are large pieces of plastic. They look awesome on the board, and anybody, when they walk by and see this game and play, it definitely grabs people's attention. This is definitely an eye candy display game. It looks cool. Even the player pieces on the board also look cool too. While there's not unique sculpts for every one of the players, and I think that may be overboard. I mean, look at what you're getting for $60 already. The sculpts look really cool. It's basically a bust of an upper half of an adventurer who you use to move around the board, and it's a cool piece. They could have gone cheap here and just thrown a little pawn in everybody's player's color, but they didn't. There's actually a mold for all the players, and it does, just like the relics, look awesome on the game board. Now the plastic goodness doesn't stop there. There's plastic for the toolboxes, fully molded, thick plastic. We're not talking about cheap, thin, chintzy plastic here. This is really good plastic. There's plastic for the pathways. There's a lot of plastic there. Even the rations that come with the game are made of plastic. Now, I would have bet money, if somebody would have bet me money before this game ever came out and said, what were the rations made out of? I probably would have gambled they were made out of cardboard because it would have been easy just to use little cardboard stock for these. No, Days of Wonder went one step beyond, and even these rations are made out of plastic. Like I said, this game looks really cool when it's set up. Pleasing eye candy, looks really cool for people to walk by or even people just playing the game. They did a great job here. Each player has their own player board, and while this isn't super thick cardboard, it's definitely not super thin cardstock or paper either. They are double-sided, and the front and the back sides are slightly different. And when I explained to you how to play the game in my actual tutorial video, I explained to you why they're different. One side has a special power for all the players, the other side is a non-powered side, depending if you want to play the advanced or the standard rules for the game. Also, the cardboard used for these temples and these shrines, the temples and the ruins is fantastic. It is very, very thick cardboard, very hardy. These are going to last a long time. They're very heavy duty. The temples themselves look fantastic. They're very large. They look really cool when you stack them up on the board. Again, Days of Wonder threw a lot of money in developing this game to make sure that what you're getting and placed on your table looks awesome. Now, while at first I have to agree that seeing a $60 price tag may be a little bit of sticker shock, especially for people used to board games in the $40 to $50 range, I think you are definitely getting your dollar's worth for that $60. Awesome plastic, fantastic high quality cardboard, and the game just looks really cool setup. Days of Wonder also did a great job with the rulebook. Now, the rulebook isn't for a very overly complex game, so they didn't have to go too overboard with the rulebook. But it's an 8-page rulebook. It explains how to play the game, and it definitely explains the game well enough that you're not going to have any questions after reading this rulebook. Definitely, again, did a really good job here. Days of Wonder, bang up job on all the components. Definitely worth $60. Good quality for your dollar here. Now, if only with the second print did they fix the wells for the insert, they'd have 100% thumbs up for me here. Every time I review a board game, it's always important for me to discuss the family friendliness of a game. Now, the board game industry is pretty standardized. All board games have a suggested minimum age listed on the side of the board game box. And while most of these are fairly accurate, not all the time are they accurate, and sometimes I like just take a few moments to discuss why I think that minimum age was chosen and whether I think that a younger age child can enjoy this game, and also discuss the family friendliness of the game overall. Now, Relic Runners lists as a game for ages 10 and up, and I think that is a fairly decent representation of the game, but I do think that a younger player can definitely play Relic Runners without too many problems. They're just not going to be quite as good at it as an older player is. And the reason why I say that is Relic Runners is a tactical game versus a immediate gratification kind of strategy game. And what I mean by that is, in Relic Runners, you are not playing for the current turn. You are planning 2, 3, and sometimes 4 turns far in advance, trying to make the optimal moves. This is a game where you need to capitalize on every one of your turns. You can't waste a turn in this game, and you need to be constantly trying to figure out what your opponents are doing and seeing what their moves they plan, sometimes 2 and 3 rounds in advance. And that is the kind of strategy that can be very difficult for younger minds. Now, again, I want to emphasize, I think that a family can enjoy this game. This game does play from 2 to 5 players, which makes it a good family game because your average family of 4 or 5 can all sit down and enjoy this game together. I just don't think a younger mind is going to be able to grasp the finer strategy of this game, and anybody who is willing to try and use good strategy and plan their moves far in advance are going to completely decimate other players in this game. On the surface, this game may look like it can be kind of random, and it may appear like you're trying to just go from turn to turn to turn, trying to capitalize on the most opportune moment for your current turn. And that is the worst way to play Relic Runners. If you want to capitalize and be successful in this game, and you actually see that in the sample gameplay I show on my other video, you see that the black player was constantly planning 2 to 3 moves in advance to try to set themselves up for the ultimate big score and the big payday for the pathways. And that's how you have to play this game. And to give you an idea of how much of a difference that made, black managed to score 25 points more than second place and 26 more points than third place. And of course, you can watch the video to see how that worked out. But that's just because with the black player, I was shown planning many turns in advance, whereas with the red player, I was basically playing for the turn, and you saw what a huge difference that make in the final scoring of the game. My overall point I want to make, though, is that definitely you can play this game with younger players. A 7-year-old can easily figure out how to play this game. The rules are very simple. There's 2 things you're going to do on your turn. You're going to move, and if you're moving on a pathway, you can move as far as your pathway takes you. And if you're not moving on a path, you get to move one simple direction or one simple movement along a path. You hit a pathway, you get to move as far as your pathway will let you. The movement rules are extremely simple. You can't move past your base camp. Very simple. You simply spend a ration if you want to do an explore action. You spend a ration, you put it back on base camp, you explore location. Very simplistic rules, very easy to understand even for a younger mind. There's not a whole heck of a lot of reading involved in this game, and even an adult can sit down and help a child read, especially for the temples. Most of them are symbols, so they're easy to understand. You just memorize the symbol. It's not that tough. But my point, again, just to reemphasize, this is definitely a tactical game where you want to be planning multiple turns in advance, and I don't think it's something a young mind can do efficiently. Good family game if you want to go easy on the young ones, but this is definitely a game for 10 and up. I definitely agree in this case. Of course, that doesn't mean you can't play this as a family game with younger players. Just you're going to have to take it easy on them, but you can still have a wonderful family gaming experience. Now, Days of Wonder lists as a game for 2 to 5 players, and the game is going to play differently depending on how many players you have. And in my opinion, I don't enjoy the game quite as much with 2 players. I actually enjoy the game with more players. Now, it's not because the game is bad with 2 players, it's just that the game becomes much more solitaire, and the fact that you really don't have a way of preventing other players from scoring is much more prevalent in a 2-player game than it is in a 5-player game. In a 2-player game, it is extremely simple for one player to basically stay on one side of the map and another player to stay on the other side of the map, and it becomes a big solo game where you're each racing each other, trying to see who's the first person to create the largest pass, to score the most points, and just win the game at the end. Now, that's not necessarily a bad thing, and if you like that kind of gameplay where each player is playing kind of their own solo game but versus an opponent trying to achieve a higher score, you'll have fun with the game. But there's really no way to directly stop a player in a 2-player game just because the map is just a little bit too big for you to be able to do that. Whereas opposed to a 5-player game, the game board gets very, very crowded. Players are going to start fighting for these resources, the locations, to try to bring out the shrines so they can get the relics out on the board. And additionally, since the players are going to be fighting for these relics and trying to get them out, and trying to get them out in a way that doesn't open up for another player to score a quick amount of points, it makes it much more cutthroat in a 5-player game. It gets to the point in a 5-player game that it almost feels like a cat and mouse game because you want to line yourself up for a shrine to get out there and grab that relic without giving it away to another player. And that's where that mind game comes in, where you want to be watching what every single other player is doing and trying to figure out exactly what their strategy is so you counter it, but at the same time advance your own strategy. And for me, that gameplay became more prevalent the more players I added to the game. Now again, I thought the game was okay with 2 players. I didn't have any problems with it, and I would probably play it again as a 2-player game, but I definitely had my most fun playing Relic Runners as a 4 or 5-player game. Now, if a future expansion comes out for the game, hint hint here, Days of Wonder, that allows you in a 2-player game to start affecting other players' pathways, maybe you have the ability to destroy other players' pathways by spending, I don't know, 2 or 3 rations just by going down their pathway. Or maybe they'll add a special ability that allows you to destroy pathways or move them. Or if they give you some ability to either maybe even move relics to other locations, or just some way to slightly screw with the other players, I might enjoy the 2-player gameplay more, but definitely right now I'm having the most fun with Relic Runners as a 4 or 5-player game. Relic Runners as a game has a lot of positives going for it. The least of which is the fantastic quality of the plastic components. Now, I know I've said it already, but the plastic that comes with this game is just literally very awesome. The fact that we have plastic representing the relics that they could have easily went chintzy on and could have just thrown some cardboard components and called it a day speaks a lot for the quality that went into this game from Days of Wonder. Additionally, there's a lot of replayability that comes with the game from the fact that you have more temples than you ever will use to create one single game. Now, there's 6 blue temples, there are 6 ivory temples, and there are 8 purple temples. Now, I realize there's only going to be 4, 4, and 4 used every single game. That's going to add to the replay value because you're going to have different temples every time you set the game up. And that goes for each single level of the temple. There's 8 of this level, 8 of the medium level, 8 of the bottom level. When it comes to the top, there are 6 top, 6 middle, 6 bottom. And for the ivory, the same thing, 6 top, 6 middle, and 6 bottom. You add up the variety that you can get, because remember, you're only going to build 4 temples out of all this variety. You're going to have a lot of gameplay variety just in the temples alone. And additionally, you're going to get more variety just by the fact that the temples are going to be randomly placed every single time you play the game. You can place them in different positions all across the board to create a unique board that's going to play differently every time you play the game. and that is the strategy of the game. Once this board is built, you want to take a mental picture when you're playing this game, and you want to figure out your strategy right in the beginning, figure out which temples are best aligned for you to build your pathways, to get out there, to get your early pathways, start forming your strategy so you can get those relics, so you can get the most points at the end of the game. Additionally, there's also added in secret player powers, and I guess I shouldn't say secret powers, they're more just powers that each player can start with at the beginning of the game, and that's going to add a little more variety to the game. Now, you don't have to use these special powers, and normally I don't because they're just a little bit too random for my play group, and that's my play group personally. I know there's a lot of people who actually like these special powers. It's just us personal. You may have a different opinion. Give it a try both ways. Decide which way you like it better. But back on point, each player is going to get their own special power that's unique to them, and that's going to add a little more variety to every time you play the game. Getting back to my original point, this game has a lot of gameplay variety, and it's not going to play exactly the same every single time you play the game, and I think that's phenomenal. I also like the fact that this is definitely very much a thinking game where you want to be planning your moves far in advance. As I said already, this isn't one of those games where you want to be living and trying to play round to round to round. You want to be playing 2 to 3 rounds in advance and planning your moves. You want to make sure that you're not giving away points to other players by opening up temples for other players, bringing out the last temple, trying to think that's going to help you, and then another player is going to simply swoop in, grab that temple, and say thank you for the bonus 5 victory points at the end of the game. The game also offers variable player powers. You get to go up whichever branch of the tree you want to go up and choose your variable player powers and base them on your strategy and how you want to play. And again, that's another thing I really like about Relic Runners. In addition, there's going to be even more gameplay variety just based on the special powers you may get from some of the ivory temples, which are going to give you extra special powers. Now, while that may be random because you don't know which ivory tower you're going to get, it is also going to help you modify your strategy as you play, and again, it's something I really like. You get various special powers that are going to give you extra victory points in the game, extra points for what you've already done in the game, allow you to get extra special abilities that are going to do things at the game end, during mid-game. It's going to add a lot of variety, just really cool. Again, the best thing I can say about this game, besides for the fact that it's a good strategy game, is the fact that it has a lot of gameplay variety. Another thing I like about Relic Runners, and for me, in my mind, this is pretty much a staple for Days of Wonder games. You can find this in Ticket to Ride, you can find it in Small World, and numerous other games from Days of Wonder that I've played. On the surface, Days of Wonder games are very simple to teach. They're not overly complex in how you play them, but there's always a lot of deeper strategy if you're willing to learn how to play the game and play it well. Even a game as simple as Ticket to Ride, which is an easy family game that you can play with the entire family, it's not hard to play, it's just simple route matching, even has a deeper level of strategy that you can appreciate once you play the game enough and you start realizing the deeper strategy. And Relic Runners is no different. The game on its surface is very simple. It's a simple move, do an action, your turn's over, next player is going to move, do an action, and their turn's over. It seems very simple. But again, there's a deeper strategy to this game just based on how you need to play the game, what you need to go after, and what your current strategies are for your long-term goal of trying to score the most points. And speaking of points, I also appreciate the fact that the scoring is semi-hidden. People don't always have fun playing a game when they look at the scoreboard and see that they're so far behind on the scoreboard that they have no chance of winning, and their enjoyment of the game is diminished. I mean, it's a simple fact. If you're playing a game and you know you don't stand a chance of winning, no matter who you are, even if you're a fantastic, very good sport, your fun of the game is going to be slightly diminished. I mean, doesn't mean you're a terrible player, it just means that you're not going to have as much fun because you're going, well, you know, basically going through the motions at this point. I know I'm not going to win. I'm just going to enjoy the social experience at this point, which is nothing wrong with that, but you know you're not going to win. So it is nice that the game does offer semi-hidden scoring. Now, it's not going to make a huge difference for players who are able to keep a semi-mental note of the approximations of the scores. And if you do have a runaway leader because somebody just was able to play better than the other players, like you'll notice in the sample game if you do check out the other video, it was pretty obvious that black was quite a bit in the lead, and it's just because it was the way I was playing more efficiently with that player, because I was just trying to show you how the game plays, but it was pretty obvious that black was going to pretty much run away with the lead towards the end of it. But barring circumstances like that, my experience from gameplay is it's never been exactly 100% sure who was the definite leader in the game. It's always come down to the end where the players had added up the scores just to figure out who the final victor was. Now, you usually knew who was going to be in last place, but the first place was usually between 2 or 3 different players, and you knew it was going to come pretty close down to the wire, which was, you know, it's nice. Now, the negatives for the game are definitely going to be very much opinion based, and it sounds silly to say that because it's all opinion, but bear with me for a moment. One of the major negatives that you may experience with Relic Runners is the fact that if you're playing terribly, there is no way to bring the leader down. If the leader is doing really well, they've built up a very good strategy, they've planned their moves in advance, and they've pretty much been able to outguess your moves and pretty much been able to figure out what you're doing, they're going to run away with the game, and there's really no way for you to stop the other players from doing that. This is basically as close as you can come to a multiplayer solitaire kind of game, if you're not playing smartly, as you're going to get. Now, I'm not going to say this is on the level of Dominion, which is definitely multiplayer solitaire, but this is one of those games where if you're not second guessing the other players and trying to stop them from doing what you think they're going to do and trying to mess up their strategies somehow by ruining what relics they're able to go for, they're definitely going to run away with the lead, and you're not going to be able to stop them. This is one of those games that there's really currently, without an expansion, Days of Wonder, another big hint here. There's no way to stop a runaway leader in this game if they just happen to have a better strategy than you. You're basically going along for the ride at that point. Now, this seems to be diminished in a 5-player game because in a 5-player game, all the players can work together. As soon as you sense that a player is really starting to go on the lead, and this happens in our 4- and 5-player games a lot, all the players are watching other players, and as soon as they sense somebody's going on lead, everybody seems to try to do their best to screw up that person's strategy by taking away the relics that they're lining up on their pathway to score those really long pathway bonuses. And you can really work together to try to help mitigate the fact that you really can't screw with the other players as much with direct interaction. Now, it became much more prevalent in the 2-player game, and as I was commenting when I was talking about the perfect player count for this game, in the 2-player game, it was very prevalent and very obvious that there really wasn't much you could do to stop the other player. Once they got the steamroller going, they were pretty much going to steamroll over you, so you had to play pretty smart there. Overall, I think Days of Wonder has another hit on their hands here. This is a very fun game if you enjoy these kind of games that are on the surface not too complex, but can definitely offer a lot of complexity for players who are trying to learn, willing to learn the finer details and strategies for the game. You can definitely have a lot of fun here. Great variety for the gameplay, great replayability. The game is very enjoyable as a 4- or 5-player game, and I think Days of Wonder did a fantastic job with the components here. While I definitely agree for some player groups, Relic Runners may be a try before you buy, I think there's also going to be a good segment of the board game population who's going to really enjoy this game. They're going to dig right into it and definitely enjoy their purchase. This has been another off-the-shelf board game reviews, looking at Relic Runners by Days of Wonder. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video review, please be sure to click that like button. Leave your comments down below in the YouTube comment channels. If you have any requests, any questions, make sure you leave those down below. And if you have requests for game reviews you'd like to see, also leave those comments down below. Again, thanks for watching.